So welcome, Taylor. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Renegade Women is a program that I started because myself and other women tend to find ourselves in this society locked into a stereotype, an expectation, or sometimes we're just having struggles that are unique to women. And this specific episode really is an advocacy episode. And Taylor, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and then let us know what you're going to talk about today.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor McCullough-Fries. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm 24 years old and a registered nurse, and I suffer from endometriosis. So today I'm here to talk about what endo is, what my chronic pain journey has been like, and how we can all advocate to help each other as women.
Now, some people sometimes say, well, renegade, that kind of sounds like the lawbreaker type of connotation. And really, the way that I use renegade in this specific show is that we're women who just don't sit back and just suffer, in your case, for example, right? We fight. And so tell us where your journey started and what started your fight with endometriosis.
Yeah, so when I was 11 years old, I got my first period, which, oh boy, exciting times, right? You're in middle school, it's a big change, there's all these hormones. But for me, on top of just going through puberty, I started having severe pain. And it kind of presented itself in an odd way. So initially, the doctors all thought, like many times, that I had appendicitis because I was having pain in my abdomen, more so on the right-handed side. I was fatigued. I was stressed out beyond belief. My periods were awful. They lasted a lot longer than they should. There were times where I bled for months on end. They were heavy, they were irregular, just nothing sort of seemed to go according to plan, if you will. So started with my pediatrician, they're worried, oh, it's appendicitis. So many ER visits and diagnostic testing later, appendix was fine. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. So from there, it kind of evolved into this game of what's the diagnosis. And that's unfortunately common for women with endo. On average, it takes 10 years for an accurate diagnosis. So unfortunately, the only way to be diagnosed with endometriosis accurately is with an exploratory laparoscopy, which is a surgery performed by a surgical gynecologist, and they have to physically go into the pelvis, find lesions of endometriosis, and then have them biopsied for confirmation. So for me, all of this started at 11. I wasn't accurately diagnosed until I was 16. And I would say, give or take, there were probably about 10 different doctors within that time frame that were trying to figure out what was wrong. And unfortunately, with endo, on average, it takes 10 years for correct diagnosis. So that's 10 years that this disease has to grow and flourish in your body and just get worse. For me, luckily, it was a shorter amount of time. It was about 5 years, but that can't be said for every woman. So
I was actually just going to say 5 years is the majority of your middle school and then most of the formative high school years. How does endometriosis undiagnosed, what are the stigmas that you had to deal with as a child in school, in pain all the time?
yeah, so in all honesty, it was pretty traumatic. I missed a lot of school, which in and of itself is hard. I was a straight A student all throughout school, so no matter what, I was pretty good about making up my work. But that being said, you have a girl who's incapacitated by pain most days. My work was being sent to me pretty erratically. So some days the teachers were good about sending it home, other days they weren't. When I was actually in school, one of the things is, I was bleeding so much, I had to use the bathroom more often than other students. And a commonality that I found is a lot of teachers get very upset when students repeatedly ask to use the restroom, because there's just the stigma that they're not paying attention in class and they're just trying to get out of it. So I would have to have doctor's notes written to the teachers to allow me to even use the restroom. Relationships with friends suffered. I mean, again, we're all going through puberty. There's a ton of hormonal changes, cliques are forming, and it was really hard for them to understand. For people that don't live with pain every day, I think it is a hard concept to wrap your brain around. So there was some bullying, which wasn't ideal. And eventually, my sophomore year of high school, I transferred to cyber school just so that I was better able to control my work. I was at home if I was in pain. I could get to doctor's appointments more easily without missing out on classwork. And in the end, it actually worked out because I got a semester of college under my belt going to cyber school. So I started college when I was 16 years old.
Wow. Hence the RN at 24. um, when it comes to pain, right now, as an example, I am walking around with a boot and a shoe, which is visible to most people, so that if I'm in a grocery store and I grab a cart, they're like, oh, she's, broken foot. I imagine not only with the challenges that you've just walked us through as a child with endometriosis, that there had to have been a lot of judgment as well that you've dealt with that, because you look okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so us in the endometriosis, and I would say chronic illness community as a whole, we're a part of what we call the invisible illness group. So on the outside, I look fine. You can't physically see any deformity, but on the inside, my body is attacking itself. And it's incredibly painful. I think for me, I've always been a very stubborn, outspoken kind of girl. I love life. I'm passionate. And so for me, that was super difficult because I wasn't being believed by doctors, friends, teachers, even some family members. And, during those formative years, it takes its toll, but it happens even now. And that's just something that I've really worked on, especially this past year, where you have to know yourself and know your worth. I know what I've been through. I know what the pain feels like. It's amazing when people are empathetic and they try to understand, but not everybody has the capacity to be that way. And those are just the people that I don't really want in my life.
I actually do understand from the mental illness side where you look like you're okay. What's wrong with you? Um, when it comes to endometriosis, you've talked a little bit about some of the doctor visits and the diagnostic process. What treatment is there out there for others with endo?
Right. So, the most effective form of treatment for endometriosis, and let me preface this by saying there is no cure. There's always a chance that it's going to come back. You need to really work with your doctors as an ongoing process. The best thing that's evidence-based practice is excision surgery. So again, it's a laparoscopy. but they go in, and if you imagine endometriosis as a weed, excision surgery is cutting that weed out by the root. There's also ablation surgery, which is burning the flower off of the weed. So it's very superficial. You think that you got it, but you didn't. And unfortunately, I went through 8 ablation surgeries before realizing that excision was the way I needed to go. And that being said, even with excision, it can still come back. So I actually had 2 excision surgeries. My last was in February of 2018, and I traveled to Atlanta, Georgia for it, to the Center for Endometriosis Care. Unfortunately, the doctors here in Pittsburgh got to the point where they essentially said that because they performed surgery on me, there was no way I could still be in pain, no way I still had endo. It was all in my head. I was anxious, stressed, the typical "you're a hysterical woman" type of comments. So traveled to Atlanta. Lo and behold, I had endo everywhere. And they also found that I had adenomyosis, which in the most simplistic layman's terms is endometriosis within the uterus. So unfortunately, there's no way to excise that. It's embedded in the uterus. It's something that is always going to be there. My uterus was thick enough that I had to have a hysterectomy. So in August of 2018, 23 years old, I had a complete hysterectomy, and they also removed my right ovary because it kept twisting and there was still endometriosis on it. So that, I think, for me was a really pivotal moment in my endo journey.
So when you have to get to the point of a hysterectomy, I'll be honest with you, I mean, is everything literally gone? Because when you said they took just my one ovary, in my mind I'm going, oh, wait a minute, I thought hysterectomy. I thought you took everything. Right. So what exactly did the hysterectomy help? How did it help you? And I know you said there's no cure, but what are the chances of the reoccurrence after having to go so far as a hysterectomy?
Right. So hysterectomy is not a cure for endometriosis. It is a cure for adenomyosis because you're removing the sick organ. So for me, that meant no more heavy periods that lasted for 6 months at a time, no more crippling pain because of my periods. So at that point, my uterus was sick enough that my doctor and I made the decision that it would give me the best quality of life. However, I do still have my left ovary, so I'm not in menopause. It's always a concern and something that has to be monitored. But that being said, my fertility has been extremely affected by endo, adeno, all of the surgeries. And I think for me, that's been the most difficult part. So reoccurrence of endo, studies say that if you have a proper excision surgery, and this is nothing to do with hysterectomy, that there's a chance that it could come back in 7 years. Some women have excision and they never need to have surgery again. Some women have excision and they have to have it sooner than that. It's very body dependent and disease dependent. For me, fertility preservation has always been a huge goal and something that I made very clear to my doctors. Unfortunately, again, the teams here in Pittsburgh didn't really heed my concerns, and they just kept saying, you're young, your egg quality will be fine, even with one ovary, don't worry about it. So last year I went to pursue egg freezing, and I don't have that many eggs. So it would be causing more harm to myself to attempt that process than, I don't want to say is worth it, but risk versus benefit, it's a slippery slope.
What would be your advice to anyone who is watching this and is wondering if, wow, I wonder if endo, adno, I wonder if there's even something else? What are the first things that women can do, young women even too? Let's say they are in their teens. Who do they go to? Parents, of course, to start, but what resources are there?
So for me, I found my resources kind of later on in my journey. There's wonderful organizations. One of the biggest and two of the co-founders have actually become friends now is the Endo Coalition. And it's a nonprofit organization that focuses on educating the public about endometriosis and about excision surgery. Because unfortunately, most regular gynecologists aren't equipped to properly deal with endo. My story and so many other women's has been one of having a lot of hormonal treatments pushed at us, lots of different kinds of birth control, some types of chemotherapeutic agents that suppress ovarian function. And unfortunately, while that may rid you of pain for a little while, there are a lot of side effects that aren't mentioned, just due to issues with big pharma and proper studies. So the Endo Coalition's goal is really just proper education and helping people find excision specialists and great doctors. Another amazing resource on Facebook is Nancy's Nook. So Nancy Peterson is an RN who suffered with endometriosis her whole life. And she created this group on Facebook where women can go. There's a whole library of research articles. You could type in, for example, oh, I'm having lower right-sided pain. And it'll pop up with articles and comments from other women who have experienced the same thing, as well as a directory of physicians listed by country and state who are excision specialists. And they've been vetted by Nancy that they are excision specialists. They're not going to push the chemotherapeutic agents unless, absolutely necessary. And that was a huge resource for me in finding a doctor who could properly treat me, not only surgically, but with respect and understanding my disease and the toll it takes physically, mentally, spiritually. So those are two amazing resources, as well as Dr. Sally Serrell. She is a physical therapist. She specializes in pelvic pain, and she and other leaders in the industry are going to be hosting an endometriosis summit in 2020. So it's going to be a big conference where patients, doctors, caregivers, everybody can congregate. There's going to be a lot of speakers. We can tell our stories and get the word out that this is a disease that is under-researched and our population needs help. They were huge, huge parts of my journey.
That's fantastic. You did give me all of the links to these resources. To any of you who are watching this and you need those resources, simply go ahead and look into the description and you'll be able to access them directly. Um, as a woman, a professional now, living with a chronic illness, do you still have those problems with employment? And can you share with us a little bit of the resources that might be out there to protect women who are early in their journey, but also want to preserve their lifestyle?
Sure, absolutely. So, again, the biggest thing is early diagnosis, early treatment. The sooner you catch the disease, the less surgery you have to have, the less side effects and comorbidities. So, other diseases that go hand in hand with endo arise. For me, unfortunately, because I got diagnosed later, had some bad experiences with surgery, I'm still dealing with daily chronic pain. As I said, I'm an RN. I got a job right out of college. I was working at the Children's Hospital in the NICU and the cardiac ICU. My dream jobs, I loved it. But last winter, it got to a point where my pain was pretty severe again. And there were times at work where I passed out from pain. I had to leave early or I had to call off. And that's a horrible feeling. You don't want to leave your fellow nurses hanging. I wanted to be there for my patients, but I just physically couldn't. And unfortunately, the corporation that I was with at the time, they didn't feel that my disease warranted further assistance. So I made the decision to resign so that, again, I wasn't leaving anybody hanging, and I wasn't putting myself through the heartbreak of people not listening to me again and not believing me. So as of right now, I'm unemployed. Not a fun feeling, especially for someone like me who is so passionate about their job and being active. But that being said, I'm pursuing further treatments. I'm doing everything I can to heal myself and get to a point where I can go back to work at a company that's maybe a little bit more understanding. My best advice is you know yourself, you know your pain. If work isn't supportive of that, and obviously this isn't an option for anybody because of financial reasons, but if you feel like you're not being supported, don't stay in that environment. You will find somewhere where you are supported, and you need to do what's best for you and your health, because if we don't have our health, we don't have anything.
And that sounds extremely unfortunate, and I'm sorry because I know how important living your purpose and your passion is. So, are there other options like disability, FMLH, long term? Like, what else can someone do?
Yeah, there absolutely are. So a lot of companies provide FMLA, so that's family medical leave. Unfortunately, in my situation, I had exhausted that with my surgery, and with every company, it's different. But look into it. See what your company's policies are for medical leave, short-term disability, and long-term disability. Your HR representative should be able to help you with that. And if it comes to the point where you're unable to work, disability is always an option. That's where I'm at. I haven't been approved or denied yet. It's a very long process, I won't lie to you. But if you have the support of your physicians and kind of, in my case, I have over a decade's worth of records kind of backing up all of my symptoms and everything, I think it's worth it to fight for and not to be ashamed of it, because sometimes we need help and it's not a forever thing. My goal, and I know the goal of most of my friends with endo, is to get to a place where we have more good pain days than bad pain days, and we can get back out into the workforce. But definitely, talk to your HR representatives, look into disability. there's so many resources and so many people out there that are willing to help. You'll find what's best for you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you are a renegade fighter, because we need more women who are willing to tell their story like you are, so that those who are coming behind us, they don't have to fight so hard, and that maybe they can be heard too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your bravery. Again, everybody, Taylor did provide the resources. Please, please take a look down there below. Do your research and talk to your physicians.
Absolutely.
Have a fantastic and blessed day, everybody.